I grew up in it every day, knowing that my dad was extremely successful, and knowing that financial success is never going to be replicated, but also just like Starbucks is such a ubiquitous brand. And even if I get to the pinnacle, the zenith, the apex of sports journalism, it's not going to probably come close to him. And it took me a really long time to be okay with that.
Welcome to the Raw Facts Podcast, everyone. I'm your host and producer, Ben Arthur, joined by NFL insider Jordan Schultz. He works for The Score. Many of you who follow the NFL will know he's one of the top news breakers in the NFL space, and a fellow Seattle guy. Jordan, thank you so much for being on the show. How's everything going?
Oh, it's such a pleasure. As I was telling you off camera, I've been following you for a while now. Really enjoy your work, and obviously thrilled to come on the pod. And like you said, the Seattle, I don't know, I didn't say you 425 or 206?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm a 4.2. I grew up in the 4.25, but I was born in the CD.
Okay, so you got the 206.
Yeah, 206 number.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bellevue, Issaquah. Yeah.
Same here. I should have checked. Yeah. So
yeah,
I always give people shit when they say they're from Seattle and they have like the 253. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, see, like when we're in other parts of the country, you have to just say Seattle.
Of course,
but when you're talking to
Kent. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm from Renton, whatever. It's one of the other, Mount Si, all those towns.
Yeah,
you say Seattle, of course. However, if you're from Seattle or in the area, you know that being from the Tri-Cities is not being from Seattle.
Exactly.
So, anyways, great to be on.
Yeah, no, thank you again for being on, Jordan. And just to kind of get right into it, to you, Jordan, Howard Schultz is dad, but to me, to kind of the rest of the world, he's been this billionaire, former CEO of Starbucks, former owner of the Seattle Supersonics. I guess, what was your childhood like because of that, knowing that your dad is dad, but to everyone else, he's like this big figure?
I think when you're a really young kid, you don't really have any comprehension of it. And as you start to come of age, I'd say probably like middle school, so at 12, 13, 14 range, it starts to become in your peripherals. And then by the time you're in high school, like freshman, sophomore year, it really is evident because you're just so much more aware of everything in your surroundings, and certain things that might be normal to you are not normal at all to anyone else. Now, I was fortunate enough, as I told you off camera, I went to, a really good school, and a lot of the kids that were at my school came from means. A lot of them were white, and it was kind of the same socioeconomic background from not everyone, but most of the kids. And so for me, having the outlet of sports and basketball was extremely important. And I bring that up because my dad was the one that brought that to me. He was a pretty successful high school quarterback in the Brooklyn Projects. That's how he got out. He went to Northern Michigan on a football scholarship. He ultimately didn't last and didn't play, but that was his way out. And he loves sports. He loves sports. And he passed that on to me. And he was the one that taught me all, how to play basketball, how to throw a basket, how to throw a baseball, how to make a tackle, how to shoot a basketball. All the things that I learned in sports were really from him. And so that really created our bond. And as I got older, I think I realized that, like I said, 14, 15, that, my dad was not just my dad, but he was someone that was really important to a lot of other people for different reasons. Financially, jobs. I mean, Starbucks has created, we talked about this yesterday, I think 5 million total jobs over its 45-year history. And currently 300,000 employees worldwide in 80-something countries. So, like, that stuff to me is just normal. And as a result of that, Ben, I grew up around things and experienced things. You mentioned the Sonics, being around celebrities, athletes, that other kids didn't, right? So it wasn't, for me, it was totally normal. But I remember, like, sometimes friends, and even obviously you have your friends that share these experiences with you, but they see a snippet of it. So, like, sometimes friends would come over, especially when I was, you know, a little bit older, and we knew like what a celebrity was, right? And like I remember Bono came over to my house. I haven't told this story, but Bono came over to my house because Starbucks was doing a partnership with Red, which was his initiative in Africa. And so what happened was he came over to the house, and I had a friend there, and I didn't even like. To me, it was cool, but it wasn't crazy, right? But for him, it was insane that Bono was in my house, and he freaked out. And I remember thinking that was really strange, but
Mm.
it wasn't strange to have that reaction. But I think that's the type of things that happen to me, and I'm very aware of this now as I've gotten older because I want like I don't want to like necessarily what's the word, like I'm really appreciative of it, but I don't want people to like look at me and necessarily associate me with my dad. So it's been a
Yeah.
really tough balance as I've gotten older, trying to navigate my own path, but also being really proud of him and my mom.
For sure, Jordan, and kind of going off of that, right? I know you played college ball, and
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of built this brand, this image for yourself in sports media. How difficult maybe has it been for you to try to earn respect from people when they just look at you and say, "Oh, you come from money, you didn't
Yeah,
have to work for anything in your life." What has it been like for you trying to push up against that and trying to create your own name?
the silver spoon syndrome.
Yeah.
That's it. And I don't blame people for thinking that because that's a natural reaction. And I said this recently on another podcast. Like I felt like I was born on home plate. You know, I went around the bases, and I like I had innate advantages that almost no one else has had, and those advantages still exist. You know, like
Mhm.
I don't. I'm very aware that like I don't have to necessarily worry about sending my kids to good schools and eating well and having access to travel and just things that are so valuable and so hard to come by. You know, like I just feel like I've been so fortunate, and so I don't blame people when they think that. However, when I was a young kid, I was so incredibly aware of the fact that other people, especially adults, let alone my peers, were thinking that. You know, when I was really young, whether or not this was, I guess it was because of my experiences and maybe just the way I was raised, but like I would go the other way so much to make sure that that person or those people didn't think that about me. You know, when my dad had the Sonics, you know, we owned the Sonics as a family for several years. It, there was a there was a a way that we go through the arena, right? We go through the back entrance, and you kind
Mhm.
of when you own the team, it's not you're not just going to a game. Like everything is very easy. The access is unparalleled. You know, you can go to the locker room, you can go anywhere in the arena. So I remember thinking like I'm gonna meet a lot of people because I'm on the floor with my dad. So they're seeing me, and they're gonna look for something. They're gonna look for something that maybe I do wrong, or I seem spoiled, or I seem like a brat. So I was so conscious, Ben, of
Mm.
making sure that I introduced myself to all the ushers and all the employees, and I knew all their names, and I really wanted to cement the fact that like that was my dad, and yes, he I'm an extension of him, but I really tried to be very respectful of the process, and so long-winded answer. As I've gotten into this position as an NFL insider and reporting news, it was really important to me to establish myself, my own brand, and try to do it through the lens of the player. Because I remember thinking when he had the team, I didn't like how the media treated him or the players, and I really wanted to be in the position one day to try and change that.
When coming from your background and knowing that, like you said, kind of the silver spoon
Yes.
syndrome or whatever, and knowing that you do have a lot of advantages in life, I guess maybe what did your dad, your family do, or what
Mm-hmm.
were some of the things you tried to do personally to make sure that you stayed humbled? I mean, you mentioned kind of
Mm-hmm.
introducing yourself to folks and
Yeah.
kind of showing that you're showing people that you're your own person, but I guess what maybe kind of gave you that wherewithal to like make
Yeah.
sure you can stay rooted in humility despite all the advantages you've had?
My parents were really conscious of the little things that add up that don't seem like a big deal. Um, you know, one of the things that was really important to them that still is and is instilled in me is, treating people well that don't necessarily have the opportunity to help you. In other words, like I mentioned, the usher or a waiter or someone in the service industry. So that person obviously, wasn't born in the same with the same means as me. So how can I relate to this person? Well, because I am treating you and approaching the situation like I don't want to pretend. I want to I want to have the lens of I'm not from this means. Like I want to put myself in your shoes. And so I want to treat you well, because just because you might not have the opportunity to quote unquote help me doesn't mean that you're not valuable, and you shouldn't be seen. And my parents were like, there were just little things they did a lot, to remind me. My mom would say, I don't want you to be one of those spoiled rich kids at your school, because I saw that. Like, I didn't watch
Mhm.
the show Succession because it was so relatable to me. I knew all those characters. I knew Tom, I knew Siobhan, I knew cousin Greg, Logan, Kendall. Those people existed in my life, and I didn't like those people. I didn't like what they stood for. And so the show was like, I can't do this. It was like traumatizing. And
Yeah.
so I experienced a lot of that as a kid, and I think it was really important to me. And there were things that I wanted to do to make myself seem different, or to seem normal, because my normal was things that nobody else could possibly imagine in terms of access. So when I was 16 and I got a car, I remember my parents saying, what do you think? And we had talked about getting a new car, nothing crazy, but like a new car that was expensive. And I decided, Ben, that this is an easy way for me to separate myself and differentiate myself. So let me get an older car that at least appears to be in not pristine condition. So I
Yeah.
got like kind of a beat up silver Jeep. It wasn't it wasn't a bad car, but it wasn't nice. It was like the least nice car at my school, essentially.
Mm.
Because a lot of the kids were driving BMWs and Audis and Mercedes. I didn't want to be that kid, and I
Mm.
didn't want to go to practice with everyone else who didn't. At AAU practice, I didn't want to show up in the parking lot of the grammar school with $100,000 car. And so I just tried to do the little things that my parents instilled in me that over time could set the precedent of he's not that person that we maybe think he could be.
Mm. And Jordan, I'm curious. Did you have was there any like pushback like from your family when you kind of want to go down the sports media route? I mean, you're an NFL insider today, but it's very different from what your dad, from what your family
Yeah,
has become known for. Um, I guess why didn't you kind of want to be in the family business,
yeah.
and what was maybe the reaction to from your family about kind of doing something different?
There were so many conversations that we had over the course of my childhood, Ben. But I think when I was probably about 16, we sat down, and I just remember basically saying, like, here's what I want to do. I want to play basketball as far as I could take it. At that point, I wanted to play overseas probably, and ultimately didn't do that. But I knew I wanted to play in college, and I knew I wanted to pursue it. I also knew from a pretty early age that I did not want to do the family business. I remember my dad saying, would you like maybe to do an internship at Starbucks corporate for the summer? And I just had such a visceral reaction, like, no. And I remember feeling badly later because I felt like I was dismissing him, but it was so ingrained in me that like that was just not the route I could go. And to my parents' credit, they were extremely supportive of both my sister, who's a couple of 3 years younger than me, and me not getting into it. And I just, like my dad would tell me, I think that's a good decision. And the reason I think it's a good decision is not because you wouldn't be successful, but because the shadow that I've created, for better or worse, is going to engulf you if you
Mm.
come here. People are just
Mm.
going to assume that you got this job because of me, and they'd probably be right. And that's not fair. It's not fair to
Mm.
them. It's not fair to you. And
Mm.
my mom had the same reaction because neither one of my parents really came from me. My dad came from really, really tough upbringing, Brooklyn projects, Canarsie, Coney Island, last stop on the F train. My mom came from, working lower middle class, small town Ohio, they really understood the value of hard work, genuine friendships, relationships, and family. And I think for me, I just knew that if I had pursued the Starbucks route, even if I was successful from a business corporate standpoint professionally, I would never have been happy. I wouldn't have had fulfillment. And as a kid, the only thing I ever really loved was sports. I love to play it. I love to talk about it. I mean, that's how I learned how to read, you know? It was like the New York Times devouring that sports section as a kid. So I just think we all knew, even when we didn't know, we knew looking back that this was not, the Starbucks route was not for him, not for me.
And Jordan, speaking of sports, being an NFL insider, I think there's kind of a lot of intrigue about kind of what that entails, because I think from a fan's perspective, you see all the tweets, like all hours of the night, like kind of breaking news, and then me also kind of being in the industry, I know how much you guys have to call people and text people and follow up, and I know it's extremely competitive. I don't think people really understand how competitive it is to get this stuff out first. What can you tell us? What can you tell the listeners about what kind of your day-to-day, the day-to-day challenges even of being an NFL insider at a really high level?
So everything you just said was on point in terms of the calls, the following up. The says unable to get video input. Okay, it's good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, yeah, the following up, the texting, the call. It's really an endless cycle, and so the key is like trying to find that balance. But the problem is for me, I've only been doing the NFL insider route really for a year and a half, and I was fortunate enough 2022 offseason to break some significant stories. I think the biggest one by far was Gronk's retirement that he gave me, and that really kind of put a stamp, I think, on my career, or at least that's the way I felt. And then this offseason, I felt like expanding on that and really having some success, and having the opportunity to break news at a relatively high level and doing it what I felt like was the right way. And that's just that, my way. And that's through the lens of the player, and empowering them and trying to tell their truth. So I think I would say the day-to-day is probably the hardest part in terms of just remembering to have these relationships, or to continue cultivating the relationships, because that most of the time you're talking to someone, it's just not necessarily about that. It's not. It might not be about football. Maybe it is about football, but it's about something totally different than the ultimate a story you're going to break. There's just a lot of these like little conversations that hopefully add up into building that relationship. And I think, like I said, the reason I brought up me being relatively new in the space is because I don't necessarily have the decades of relationships with the current GM who was a scout 15 years ago, So yeah, I feel like, yes, that is a disadvantage per se, because I haven't been doing it as long, and obviously experience makes a big difference. The advantage is that I think we grew up, at least I'm 37, younger than me, but having like kind of the first digital native generation, and really trying to maximize social media and use it as an opportunity to A, build relationships, genuine friendships, and B, cultivate my brand in a way that is really indicative of what I feel, or how I feel I want to project, like I said, kind of if you will, the player's insider, and that was the only way I ever felt like I wanted to do it, because I think, like I said earlier, the earlier relationships as a kid, and in the experiences of being around an NBA team, being around NBA players, really shaped me in the way that I want to cover the league. So, again, another long-winded answer just to say that there is a lot that goes in day to day, because, like you said, it's very competitive, and there's only a finite number of stories.
What's your craziest like breaking news story, breaking news moment that you can think of, where you had something, or you had to get something confirmed, and you're maybe worried that Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport is going to get to it before you? Like, do you have any story like that where
Absolutely.
it got really crazy? Like, something like that?
I've told the Gronk one so many times. I don't know if it's worth retelling. I mean, basically, I'll tell you two, because another one that's good too. But the Gronk one's good because of the significance of the story, the fact that he had told me he was going to give me the news when it came, how random it was. It was like I wasn't expecting it. And then he calls me and he says, I need you to wait a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I get off the phone. Okay, oh, shit, this is going to get leaked. Because Adam's, like, I'm connecting the dots. His agent is Drew Rosenhaus. Drew and Adam are very close. This is going to get leaked in 20 minutes. So now I have to reach back out to Rob and say, is there any way we can speed up that process? And he's a little hesitant. And then he says, oh, fuck it, just go. And so now I have the whole world seeing this tweet that in a second engulfs social media. Rob is
he really looked out. He really looked out for you, because I feel like as the I feel like as the newsbreaker, almost to like push a guy to allow you to get it out sooner. Like he really looked out for you.
Because I said, this is your story, and I'm so grateful that you're giving me the chance to announce it. But I said to him, there's a real chance it's going to get leaked. And I said, you've been so gracious enough, but I know he had basically told me, like, you've been such a good friend to me. I want to return the favor. And I realize how big this is for you. And I said, given that, I said, maybe we can speed up this process. And when he said, go, and then he was like, I'm going to retweet it too. I couldn't believe it. My phone, I've got some big ones, but my phone has never gone as crazy as it did that afternoon. I mean, it was wild, man. I had players, GMs, agents, like, what the fuck's going on? How do you get that? Because normally you say source. In this case, he had made it a point to tell me weeks prior, don't use source. I want you to say you got it from me. That'll put it on another level. And then he says, I'm going to retweet it too. So it was like boom, 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 right? You have the news. It's from Rob. He retweets it. So that was like, it was one of the best experiences for me, because I had really felt like we had a great connection, but I also knew but I also knew, Ben, that there was a lot of people after the story. It could easily get leaked. And you had, like, the chances felt slim, even though Rob, it wasn't because he was going to screw it up. It was because how valuable that information was. So that was massive for me. And I saw him at the Super Bowl in Phoenix, and I said, I love you, buddy. And he said, I got you, big dog. And I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and every time I'm with him or I talk to him, I say thank you, because it was so above and beyond. The other one was Kadarius Toney. So, one of the ways that, like, there are different types of ways to get stories. You obviously, like in Rob's case, you get it from the player. You have the agent, you have the team, and usually it's agent or team, and everyone is after the beauty of the NFL is there's always another story, and you do want to keep that in mind. But there's also the idea that during free agency or during the trade deadline, there's a finite number, and you want to try to maximize it. In the case of Kadarius Toney, you're not gonna, like, trades are really tough to get because you have multiple parties. You have the agent of the player, and you have two different teams, two organizations. And then you have other players that are involved in the trade. So there's just a lot of moving parts. When I broke that trade, I was right here. It was trade deadline. I was on my computer working, kind of on the phone and just checking. And I saw the text. Kadarius Toney traded to the Chiefs for conditional third-round pick, whatever it was. And my phone, my hand, like, did like a what's it called? It almost couldn't move. It was dead. I was like, and I looked at it and I said, oh, I got to go. And so, because I knew, like, someone's going to get this. For whatever reason, no one got it for, like, I don't know, 8-10 minutes, whatever it was. It was like buried. Not buried. It was a really strange deal, right? It wasn't just a player signing with a team. It was a significant player from a 10-pole franchise in the Giants going to the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes there were so many juicy parts to that story. And for whatever reason, it didn't get leaked for quite some time. 8 or 10 minutes is an eternity when it comes to the breaking news space. So that one, my phone blew up for different reasons. And I went on McAfee right away, and those are always cool. And, to do those hits. And, I had, I know some people weren't thrilled about that one. I was ecstatic, and I was really, really happy for the player, because I knew he was going to succeed with Kansas City. And I was really happy, just for myself selfishly to have an opportunity to break a trade of that magnitude.
Yeah, not everyone being happy. That's probably just a nature of kind of the breaking news space at times. And Jordan, last question for you. I think what your kid or what have you was kind of trying to bug you. So I'm
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, kind of last question for you. What's the end game, right? Like you've kind of established yourself in sports media. You've done, NBA news breaking. Sure. I know you have that pod with CJ McCollum. You've kind of navigated into the NFL space, established yourself as kind of one of the leading NFL news breakers, but kind of why do you do it at this point? Like what is the goal for you?
Yeah. And that's something that, quite honestly, Ben, I've struggled with too, trying to find that end goal. I had lunch with my dad yesterday. Talked about him earlier. It's good to do a 360 here. He said to me, just make sure you know what your core purpose is, which means day to day, but also long term, that like 30,000 foot view. And I still struggle with it to a degree. I guess in a nutshell, I want to become one of the leading NFL insiders. I want to become one of the axes in the space, and I want to become synonymous with integrity, trust, talent. Hopefully, I want to be on camera. I want to be writing stories. I basically continue what I'm doing, but just keep further establish it to the point where I'm synonymous with you mentioned Adam, for example. So I just really want to become one of the greats. I think recognizing that the success that my dad has had, he's one of one, it's he's one of one. It's a unicorn status, if you will. And I'm very aware of that because I grew up in it every day, knowing that my dad was extremely successful and knowing that financial success is never going to be replicated, but also just like Starbucks is such a ubiquitous brand. And even if I get to the pinnacle, the zenith, the apex of sports journalism, it's not going to probably come close to him. And it took me a really long time to be okay with that, but now I am okay with it. And it's also really prepared me because I'm so unfazed by the criticism and the skeptics, like I said earlier, trying to go the opposite way as a young kid to really make sure they didn't look at me like that. All that has prepared me now, and as well as my parents' support and my wife and my family, to just be so comfortable in my own skin and have the self-confidence that comes with being vulnerable. And so, and as my dad would say, surround yourself with smarter people, and not only to be okay with not being the smartest person in the room, but to welcome it. So all of that's really put me in the position now to, I think, feel really good day to day of where I'm at and recognize that there's a really long way to go.
Love it, Jordan. Well, everyone, appreciate you guys for constantly rocking with me, for supporting the show. Be sure to subscribe to the Raw Facts podcast on YouTube, and you can follow the show on Instagram, Twitter. Jordan Schultz, everyone, NFL insider for The Score. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Bro. I love what you're doing. I really appreciate it, and it's a pleasure. And if there's anything I can ever do from my standpoint to help you, I'm here for you, especially as a fellow Seattleite.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Peace out.